Tonight, the Prichard Police Department is investigating 3 shootings that happened this morning in the city, one of which took the life of a 67-year-old woman.
Prichard Police and the Mobile County Sheriff's Office are investigating a barrage of shootings early this morning. 3 happened over a 2-hour span, one of them ending in the death of a 67-year-old woman who was shot and killed.
We love you, Ethel!
In that somber ceremony drawing out the crowds onto Sample Street in Prichard, the very street Thomas lost her life. You can see those framed pictures of Miss Thomas scattered about the area on your screen there. I'm told Miss Thomas loved to host events where food was involved, so her family and friends did just that in her honor as they hunt for the killer or killers responsible. In a stance of solidarity, those families came together to not only honor her life, but to take a stand against the rampant violence.
"67-year-old Ethel Moore Thomas was a strong, loyal, and loving woman who was considered the glue of the family, always ensuring everyone around her had everything they needed. She was easily considered the matriarch of her community, often hosting events full of good food, fun, and laughter. Ethel was a resilient woman who, despite life's challenges, remained resilient and true to herself. She faced several medical issues over the years, including beating cancer not once, but twice. Most importantly, she and her husband had been married for nearly 50 years and counting. Little did anyone know, a tragic chain of events would soon occur that will rock Ethel's community to the core. Just before 6 a.m. on July 31st, Prichard police responded to a home at 1043 Sample Avenue for reports of a shooting. Upon arrival, they would locate an unresponsive adult female inside of a back bedroom.
Shots fired in 3 different places in Prichard within less than 2 hours, including one shooting that claimed the life of a grandmother asleep inside of her home. Here are the 3 locations where bullets flew between 4 and 6 o'clock this morning. First, on Clara Avenue, then Mount Sinai Avenue, the deadly shooting on Sample Street.
The victim was identified as 67-year-old grandmother Ethel Moore Thomas, who was sadly pronounced dead at the scene after succumbing to a single gunshot wound. Based on eyewitness accounts, unknown subjects drove by her residence and began firing into her home while she and her husband were sound asleep in bed, firing roughly 20 rounds. Ethel was struck through her bedroom wall and pronounced deceased at the scene. Investigators began working around the clock to find the killer or killers. Police would quickly learn that there were 2 other instances of drive-by shootings that same morning. A man who was asleep inside of his vehicle was grazed in the head with a bullet after a drive-by shooting, and a woman who was inside of her home with her children also had multiple shots fired towards her home. Mobile County Sheriff Paul Birch says there is clear evidence that some of these shootings are related and involve multiple people who are likely gang-affiliated.
Shelby, investigators tell me that it's likely unclear as of the motive, but authorities say all 3 shootings are likely gang-related, made up of young people.
I want to send a clear message to these gutless thugs out here doing this. We're going to stop it, but there's also been some recent threats against law enforcement. So I want to strongly say to you, if you point a gun at law enforcement, especially Mobile County Sheriff's deputies, it will probably be the last stupid decision you make in your life.
Round after round of gunfire piercing the stillness early Wednesday morning in Prichard. Investigators say 67-year-old Ethel Moore Thomas was sleeping peacefully in her home alongside her husband when a group of people drove by her home, opened fire, and killed her. It all happened on Sample Street around 6 a.m.
She didn't have anything to do with anything that was going on in the city, going on with any of these gangs that are out here shooting up people and robbing and killing folk.
Police say Thomas was a grandmother, and they believe the fatal shooting involved a Glock switch.
Just by the sound of the rapid gunfire. That's another battle that we're dealing with on the street.
But that's not all. Right before Thomas was killed, 2 other shootings occurred. Investigators say a young man was sleeping in his car on Clara Avenue when he awoke to gunfire. Luckily, he only suffered minor injuries from debris that struck his leg. Then, 30 minutes later, authorities say a young woman and her children were sleeping inside their home on Mount Sinai Avenue when shots were fired at their house. Thankfully, no one was injured.
She had to get on the floor. Now she's leaving the home because she's afraid that people may come back and try and retaliate.
Investigators say over 20 rounds of gunfire were fired at each scene.
We don't believe that any of these people that sustained injuries or were shot at this morning, we don't believe any of them to be the intended targets.
Mobile County Sheriff Paul Birch and Prichard's Lieutenant Robert Martin are taking a unified stance against what they're calling senseless acts of gang violence. The people responsible still at large. They're urging people to come forward.
They may be fearful of retaliation. However, if we don't get the people off the street, then it will continue to happen.
The lives for the family of Ethel Thomas would change forever after learning the devastating news.
I can't believe it, you know. And me and her were close like sisters. And that's going to hurt me. You know. She was a sweet person.
She was the mother to everybody around here. I mean, we not just hurting. I mean, everybody's hurting. Like, everyone's hurting. She fed this whole community.
Thomas's family says Ethel was resilient as she's had her share of medical problems over the years, but they never expected her life to end like this.
She was a fighter. She battled cancer twice and beat it. Yeah, she battled triple bypass and beat it. She battled reconstructive surgery on her face and beat it. And for somebody to take her out with a bullet, I just don't understand.
They didn't have to do that.
You're not safe in your own home.
Nope.
The senseless gun violence has led community activists like Patrick Munderland to speak out.
More neighbor responsibility. Neighbor sees something, don't just sit back and close your door. Call the police.
And as for her family, the one thing they say they'll miss about Ethel was her delicious food.
She can cook, yes. She didn't teach me, but she can cook.
What's something that she would cook that you say is really good?
Beans.
Yep.
Beans and greens.
Beans and greens.
Beans and greens.
Oh.
Family, friends, and even strangers gathered for a candlelight vigil to honor the life of a woman who meant so much to many, a true matriarch of her community.
I have a special operations division. It's 40-something deputies that are 100% proactive, so I can send in to any part of the county that we need to address problems.
Birch stressed that no one should live in fear in their own home.
We get frequent calls from citizens of Prichard. They're scared to go out in their front yard. They're scared to sit on their porch. And no one should have to live that like that.
As law enforcement prioritizes the safety of residents, Birch says their own well-being is also at risk. The sheriff tells Fox 10 News that gang members have been making threats against deputies. He made it clear that they will respond decisively to any attempts to harm law enforcement.
If you point a gun at law enforcement, especially a Mobile County deputy, again, it'll be the last stupid decision you make.
As of right now, there's still been no arrest in the case, and police, along with law enforcement, are encouraging anyone with information to come forward. The case remains ongoing.
This was a senseless, reckless disregard for human life shooting into someone's house, especially while they're in their sleep. And I want to send a clear message to these gutless thugs out here doing this. We're going to stop it, but there's also been some recent threats against law enforcement. So I want to strongly say to you, if you point a gun at law enforcement, especially Mobile County Sheriff's deputies, it will probably be the last stupid decision you make in your life. So, and I want that message loud and clear, but we're going to put an end to it.
Do you believe that those three incidents from this morning are related?
It's unclear right now if these incidents are related, but I don't believe they are related, other than in relation to some gang type activity or either some type of retaliation from maybe a juvenile involved in some gang type activity.
At the time, we don't know these people are correct.
We don't, and again, our crime scene works, every scene with the Prichard Police Department, and we're collecting evidence and assisting them with interviews. We hope that we will get some, actionable intelligence on this, and we're going to go after them hard and heavy, and do our best to incarcerate them for the rest of their life. Because it's inexcusable for somebody to shoot into somebody's house, while they're in their sleep. It's stupid just to shoot the way they've been shooting anyway, but it's, I think we've talked enough where it's clear that it's gang activity and it's young people. One thing that I was briefed on by Lieutenant Martin is they believe the third shooting involved a Glock switch just by the sound of the rapid gunfire. And that's another battle that we're dealing with on the street. So, obviously, we encourage anyone who has any information, contact Prichard Police Department or Mobile County Sheriff's Office. And, you can remain anonymous, but we would like the information.
As for the third shooting where the woman unfortunately lost her life, do you know if her or her husband was the intended target of that shooting, or do you believe that that person was around at all?
No, we don't believe that. We don't believe that any of these people that sustained injuries or were shot at this morning, we don't believe any of them to be the intended targets. However, like Deputy Birch said, it's just senseless that people would go around and target family homes and shoot into them, not knowing if a person is in there. And even if you did know a person was in there, it's still stupid to just go around shooting senselessly, because it's still not solving the problem that you're trying to resolve.
You guys have touched on this already, but home obviously is the place that you want to feel the safest. So when we rode out there today, people are worried, they're anxious about, what could happen in their very neighborhood. So what message would you have to the people that are still living on that street or just in these areas?
Well, a person's home, should be their castle where they do feel safe, from anything. And, one other thing that I think we neglected to say, based on our briefing, there were 20 plus rounds fired at each scene. And so, it's not like it's just an accidental shooting into someone's home. And again, that's, you should feel safe in your home no matter where you live. And, we are going to put an end to it.
You care to go over the basic, I can show it a little bit later, you know, the basic information of those three incidents in case I missed it earlier, just kind of where they happened, the shootings and everything.
Like I said, the first incident happened in the 1200 block of Clara Avenue, where a young male was asleep in his vehicle, and he was awakened by gunfire. The second one happened in the 600 block of Mount Sinai, where a young woman was there with her family and kids and was awakened by rapid gunfire, and she had to get on the floor. Now she's leaving the home because she's afraid that people may come back and try and retaliate for whatever reason it may be. And then, like I say, the final incident happened in the 1000 block of Sample Street, where a elderly couple was at home and asleep in their beds, probably getting ready to get up, start their day off. But unfortunately, the elderly lady, who was 67 years old, she didn't make it. So this is a tragedy in all situations, but this third one was definitely a true tragedy.
For the last shooting that happened with the elderly couple, was there any injuries at all that the husband sustained or anything?
None that we were aware of, none that were visible when we were on scene.
About what times did the first two incidents happen on Clara and Mount Sinai?
I just say between the hours of 4, but they were within the hour, within 30 minutes or so of each other.
All three incidents were about within 30?
Well, the last incident was probably about an hour later, because it was going into 6 o'clock.
You both mentioned that these gangs are likely comprised of young people. Anything that you want to say on that?
I think I said what I wanted to say about it, and I hope that message gets to them.
I mean, ruling with him, we were tired of it. It's just senseless young kids going around getting easy access to guns, switches, and all this type of stuff. And we just had an incident a couple weeks back where 2 young kids were killed right up here at 200 Mare Street, and then maybe 3 hours later, another kid was gunned down, and it just continues to go on.
How can we combat this senseless violence that we're seeing among our youths in this community?
Well, I feel like it's going to start from the legislative people. They have to get stricter gun laws in here, to whereas anyone caught with switches and illegal handguns anyway, they should automatically do extensive time right off the bat.
Is there going to be more police patrol around these areas now, or are there already?
We have been partnering with Prichard, and we're in here most of last week. We had an operation Monday and yesterday where we were conducting federal roundups. So we will get right back on it, if not this afternoon, tomorrow. And they will be sustained. They're not just show up for a couple of days and, we are going to help clean up the streets.
How important is it for people to come forward even if they're reluctant or hesitant?
It's extremely important from the sense that, I know a lot of times they may be fearful of retaliation. However, if we don't get the people off the street, then it will continue to happen. And I'll say again, information can be given anonymously. And we follow up on each and every tip. And some of the recent homicides and shootings, as soon as we get something or Prichard gets something, we share information and put a plan together. But it's extremely important. If we don't know the information, we can't move on it.